"She's your mother." 3 words. A stranger's voice. José Simon's entire world detonated in the space between one heartbeat and the next. José Simon, tattooed king of the Las Vegas underworld, the man who'd buried rivals and bought senators, stood in a Beverly Hills parking lot with his hand raised to strike a beggar. But not just any beggar. 5 minutes earlier, everything had been perfect. The supermarket run was supposed to be quick. Champagne for tonight's celebration, cigars for the new Beverly Hills partners. His purple Ferrari was parked in the loading zone because José Simon parked wherever he wanted. She'd come from the blind spot between cars, elderly, broken, moving like the world had beaten her down decades ago. Her foot caught on the curb, and she'd grabbed his door handle to catch herself. The scratch was 6 inches long, on a jagged white scar across the purple perfection. He'd grabbed her arm. "You know what you just did?" She'd looked up at him with eyes that should have been empty. But they weren't. They were familiar. Disturbingly familiar. "Get out of here." Now, she'd tried. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. She clutched the car for balance, fingers leaving prints on the glossy surface. A crowd was forming. Phones were rising. José Simon doesn't get filmed losing control in public. He'd reached for her again. Not to help, but to physically remove her from his vehicle. That's when the redhead appeared. Young, uniformed, terrified, but moving anyway. She'd physically wedged herself between them, one hand on José's chest, the other pointing at the old woman's throat. "She's your mother." "The locket, José. Look at the locket." And there it was, tarnished silver, on hand-carved roses, the twin to the ring José wore on his own finger, the one his mother had been wearing the night she died. 20 years ago. José's hands shook on the steering wheel. He hadn't noticed until now, until the adrenaline started draining and reality crept in like cold water. The purple Ferrari roared through Beverly Hills traffic, weaving between lanes with the kind of recklessness that came from having enough money to make any accident disappear. In the passenger seat, the maid, Aita, she'd said her name was Aita Rodriguez, held the old woman against her shoulder. The beggar's head lolled with each turn, gray hair matted against Aita's pristine white collar. The smell was overwhelming. Unwashed skin, rotting fabric, something worse underneath. José had cracked the windows despite the heat. "Where are we going?" Aita's voice was steady, but her knuckles were white where they gripped the woman's arm. "Somewhere private." José's jaw was so tight it ached. "Somewhere nobody asks questions." The locket swung against the old woman's throat with each bump in the road. Silver. Tarnished, almost black. But the pattern was unmistakable. Roses carved by hand, each petal slightly different, because his father hadn't been a jeweler, just a man trying to make something beautiful for his wife. José had watched him carve it. He'd been 7 years old, sitting on the apartment floor while his father worked by lamplight. His mother had cried when she'd opened it on their anniversary. She'd never taken it off, until the night she died. Except she hadn't died. Apparently. The woman in his car smelled like death, looked like death, but wore his mother's locket. His mother, who'd been killed 20 years ago in a gang shooting. His mother, who he'd buried in a closed casket because the body had been too destroyed to view. His mother, whose death had turned him from a frightened teenager into the thing he was now. "This is insane." The words came out strangled. "This is completely insane." "The locket," Aita started. "Could be stolen. Could be a copy. Could be anything." But his voice cracked on the last word. They pulled into an industrial area east of downtown. The clinic didn't look like a clinic. It looked like a warehouse with blacked-out windows and a reinforced door. José had used it before for associates who needed treatment without police reports. The doctor asked no questions because José paid him enough to retire 5 times over. He parked in the underground garage and killed the engine. For a moment, nobody moved. "Get her out." José didn't look at either of them. "Carefully." Aita struggled with the woman's weight. She was small herself, maybe 5'4" in her practical shoes, and the beggar was dead weight, consciousness flickering like a failing bulb. José watched in the rearview mirror as Aita wedged her shoulder under the woman's arm, half carrying, half dragging her toward the service entrance. Something in his chest twisted. This girl, this stranger in a maid's uniform, had thrown herself between him and violence without hesitation, had screamed at him in front of witnesses, had demanded he see what was right in front of his face, and now she was struggling to hold up a woman who might be the ghost of his past. He got out, crossed to them in 3 strides, lifted the woman himself, one arm under her knees, one behind her back. She weighed nothing. Bones and fabric and the smell of streets. "Open the door," he said to Aita. Inside, the clinic was sterile white and chrome. The doctor, a gray-haired man named Richard, took one look at José's face and asked no questions. He gestured to an examination room and vanished to scrub in. José laid the woman on the paper-covered table. Her eyes opened briefly, unfocused, then closed again. The locket pooled in the hollow of her throat. Aita was already moving, wetting paper towels at the sink, approaching the woman with the careful determination of someone who'd done this before. "Stop," José's voice was cold. "Don't touch her." Aita turned, met his eyes. "She needs to be cleaned. We need to see her face." "You need to tell me the truth." He moved closer, using his size the way he always did, as a weapon, as a wall. "Who put you up to this? Who sent you?" "Nobody sent me." Aita didn't back up. "I work 3 jobs. One of them is at the supermarket. I saw her there yesterday, sleeping by the dumpsters. And I saw the locket. So you what? Planned this? Waited for me? I didn't know you'd be there today." Her voice was calm, unnervingly calm. "But when I saw you about to hit her, I recognized you from the news. And I recognized the locket because my grandmother had something similar. I put it together." José leaned in until they were inches apart. "If you're lying, if this is some kind of con, you won't leave here. Do you understand?" Aita's green eyes didn't waver. "Then I guess you better hope I'm telling the truth." She turned back to the sink, wet another towel, crossed to the table and began, with gentle precision, to wipe decades of street grime from the unconscious woman's face. And José watched, frozen, as his mother's features emerged from underneath. The DNA results came back in 40 minutes. Dr. Oakes handed José the tablet without a word, then quietly excused himself from the room. José stared at the screen. Numbers and percentages that might as well have been hieroglyphics, except for one line, printed in bold. Probability of maternity, 99.97%. The tablet slipped from his hands, clattered against the tile floor. Neither woman looked up. Aita was still cleaning Elena's face with the same methodical gentleness she'd been using for the past half hour, and Elena simply stared at nothing, the eyes open but empty. "José?" Aita's voice came from very far away. He couldn't breathe. The sterile air caught in his throat like broken glass. 20 years. 20 years of rage and grief and the kind of darkness that turned boys into monsters. 20 years of building an empire on the foundation of his mother's death. 20 years of justifying every terrible thing he'd done because the world had taken her from him. And she'd been alive. Alive and on the streets. Alive and starving. Alive and within reach this entire time. The sound that came out of him wasn't human. It was the howl of something wounded beyond repair, beyond recognition. He slammed his fist into the wall and felt bone meet concrete. Felt something crack. Didn't care. Hit it again. Again. José, stop. Aita was there, hands on his arm trying to pull him back. He shoved her away. Not hard, but enough. She stumbled, caught herself against the examination table. Elena flinched at the movement, a full-body tremor that made her look even smaller than she was. And that tiny gesture of fear, stopped him cold. His mother was afraid of him. José sank to the floor, back against the wall he'd just destroyed, and put his head in his hands. His knuckles were bleeding. He watched the blood drip onto the white tile and thought about all the other blood that had been on his hands over the years. How much of it had been because of a lie. I buried her. His voice was broken, unrecognizable. I stood at her grave, and I buried her. Aita crouched beside him, careful to stay just out of arm's reach. Smart girl. Whose body was in the casket? I don't know. They said it was too damaged to view. Closed casket. Closed everything. He laughed, bitter and sharp. I was 17. What did I know? Silvio handled all of it. Silvio arranged the funeral. Silvio identified the body. Silvio told me the people responsible and helped me. He stopped, looked up at Aita. He helped me become this. On the table, Elena made a sound. Not a word, just a whimper, like an animal that had forgotten how to speak. Aita was on her feet immediately, back at Elena's side, murmuring soft reassurances in Spanish. José watched his mother, alive, real, breathing, cling to this stranger with desperate fingers. Elena's hands fisted in Aita's uniform, knuckles white with the effort of holding on to something solid. She wouldn't look at José, turned her face into Aita's shoulder like a frightened child. She doesn't remember you, Aita said quietly. Or she does, and she's terrified. Trauma does that. Makes the brain shut down to survive. How do you know? My grandmother, after the accident. Aita smoothed Elena's hair back from her forehead. She stopped speaking for 2 years, just held my hand and stared at walls. José pushed himself to his feet, crossed to the table slowly, movements deliberate, non-threatening. Elena's breathing quickened. She burrowed deeper against Aita. "Mama," he whispered. The word felt foreign in his mouth. He hadn't said it in 2 decades. "Mama, it's me. It's José." Nothing. Not even a flicker of recognition. He reached out, hand trembling, and gently touched her arm. She didn't pull away, but she didn't respond either. Just let his hand rest there like it was another piece of medical equipment, meaningless and cold. That's when he saw it. The sleeve of her dress had ridden up with Aita's cleaning, exposing the pale underside of Elena's forearm. And there, burned into the skin and scar tissue that had to be decades old, was a mark José knew intimately. A circle with 3 slashes through it. The symbol his organization used to brand people who owed debts they couldn't pay. People who belonged to the syndicate now, body and soul, until their debt was worked off. His organization, his symbol, his brand on his mother's skin. "No." The word came out strangled. "No, no, no." Aita saw where he was looking. Her face went pale. "What is that?" "It's mine." José's voice was hollow. "It's how we mark our debtors, the people at the bottom of the chain. The ones who clean our buildings and work our Kit Richards and disappear if they try to leave." He touched the brand with shaking fingers. "How long have you worked for me, Mama? How many times did I walk past you and not see?" Elena finally looked at him. Really looked, eyes focusing for the first time since they'd arrived. And in those eyes, José saw something worse than hatred. He saw nothing at all, just emptiness where recognition should have been. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Her voice, when it came, was like rust grinding against rust, words half-formed and struggling. "Sil, Vio. The name hung in the air between them like poison. Silvio, Elena repeated, and made a gesture with her free hand, a key turning in a lock. Locking. Trapping. Aita's eyes met José's over Elena's head. "Oh, your godfather did this?" But José already knew the answer, had known it the moment he saw the brand. Silvio had been his father's best friend, had been at the hospital when José was born, had taught him to shoot, to fight, to lead, had held him while he cried at his mother's funeral, and then taught him how to turn grief into rage. Silvio had made him into a weapon, and he'd kept the ammunition alive all these years, branded and broken and hidden in plain sight. José stood in the clinic's back office with his phone in his hand, staring at Silvio's contact photo. The old man's face smiled back at him. Silver hair, distinguished features, the kind of face that belonged on currency or oil paintings. The face of the man who'd raised him after his father died, the man who'd built an empire beside him, the man who'd branded his mother like livestock. His thumb hovered over the call button. In the next room, he could hear Aita's soft voice, still murmuring to Elena in that gentle mix of English and Spanish. Dr. Oakes had sedated Elena lightly, just enough to let her rest without nightmares. She'd finally stopped shaking. He pressed call. Silvio answered on the second ring. "José, twice in one day. Should I be worried?" The voice was warm, paternal. The same voice that had talked him through his first kill, his first negotiation, his first betrayal. José's free hand clenched into a fist. "I found something today." He kept his voice level, measured. "Someone, actually." "Oh?" A pause. "Business or personal?" "Both." José turned away from the door, lowered his voice. "You're not going to believe this, Padrino. My mother, she's alive." The silence on the other end stretched too long. 3 seconds. 5. Long enough for José's instincts, the same instinct Silvio had honed, to start screaming. "That's impossible." Silvio's voice had changed, still controlled but colder now. Careful. "José, we buried your mother 20 years ago. I was there. You identified someone else." José's voice was steel. "I have her here. DNA confirmed. It's her." Another pause. "Where did you find this woman?" "Beverly Hills. She was homeless, starving." He didn't mention the brand yet. Wanted to see where Silvio would take this. "She had my mother's locket, the one my father made." "Lockets can be stolen, José. You know this. Someone is playing you." "The DNA doesn't lie. DNA can be faked." Silvio's voice took on that reasonable, a persuasive quality he used in negotiations. "Think about this. After 20 years, a homeless woman appears with a piece of jewelry, and you want to believe. I'm not asking for permission to believe." José's jaw was so tight it ached. "I'm telling you what is. She's alive. She's been alive this whole time. And I want to know how that's possible." The silence was different now. Dangerous. "Where are you?" Silvio asked. "Somewhere safe." "José, listen to me very carefully." The paternal warmth was completely gone. "Whoever this woman is, she's a plant. Someone trying to destabilize you before the Beverly Hills expansion. Bring her to me. Let me handle this." "Handle it how?" "The way we handle all threats." José's blood went cold. "She's not a threat. And she's my mother. She's a problem that needs solving." Silvio's voice was flat now, emotionless. "And you're too close to see it clearly. Give me the address. I'll send people." José ended the call. His hand was shaking. He stared at the phone like it had bitten him. 20 years of trust, of loyalty, of believing this man had his best interests at heart. And in one conversation, it had all crumbled. The door opened. Aita stepped through, saw his face, stopped. "What happened?" "He wants her dead." The words came out hollow. He didn't say it outright, but that's what he meant. Handle the problem, Send people. Aita crossed her arms. You sound surprised. Of course I'm surprised. He's my... José stopped, looked at her. You're not. I watched his face when you mentioned calling him earlier. In the examination room. Aita leaned against the doorframe. You didn't notice because you were too busy falling apart. But I did. You said you needed to tell Silvio the good news, and I saw your mother's reaction. What reaction? Terror. Aita's green eyes were steady. Pure terror. She tried to say his name before, remember? And she made that locking gesture. She wasn't trying to tell you he imprisoned her, José. She was trying to warn you. José's fist hit the wall before he knew he was moving. The drywall caved, white dust exploding around his knuckles. Pain shot up his arm. He welcomed it. 15 years, he said through clenched teeth. I've known him for 15 years since my father died. He taught me everything. He was at every birthday, every victory, every... Another punch. More dust. How could I not see it? Because he made sure you wouldn't. Aita's voice was matter-of-fact. That's what predators do. They make you trust them so completely that you can't imagine them hurting you. José turned to face her, breathing hard. You barely know me. Why are you still here? Because she needs me. Aita nodded toward the examination room. And because I think maybe you do too. Before José could respond, Dr. Oakes appeared in the hallway, tablet in hand, face grim. We have a problem. They followed him to the security office. The doctor pulled up footage from the underground garage, rewound it, pointed. That sedan. It arrived 10 minutes after you did. Hasn't moved since. Tinted windows, no plates visible from this angle. José's blood went cold. Show me the street cameras. Dr. Oakes switched feeds. The street outside showed 2 more vehicles, parked at intervals that were too calculated to be coincidence, watching the exits. They're already here. José's mind was racing. How did they? Your car, Aita interrupted. She was staring at the garage feed. The Ferrari. When was the last time you had it serviced? José looked at her. Silvio's personal mechanic handles all my vehicles. Why? Aita was already moving, back toward the garage. José and Dr. Oakes followed. She went straight to the purple Ferrari, dropped to her knees, reached up under the rear wheel well. Her hand came back holding a small black device, no bigger than a matchbox. GPS tracker, she said. Commercial grade. The kind you can buy online for $200. José stared at the device in her palm. He's been tracking me. Probably for years. Aita stood, wiped her dusty hand on her already ruined uniform. Which means he knows exactly where we are. And those cars outside, they're not here to ask questions. As if on cue, José's phone buzzed. A text from Silvio. Be reasonable. Let me help you. José crushed the tracker under his heel, looked at Dr. Oakes. Is there another way out? The doctor nodded slowly. Service tunnel. Connects to the building 3 blocks over. But you'll have to leave the car. The car doesn't matter. José was already moving back toward the examination room where Elena slept. We need to move now. How many exits are they watching? All of them, if they're smart, Aita said. José stopped at the door, looked back at her. This girl who'd thrown herself between him and violence. So who'd cleaned his mother's face, who'd just saved their lives by thinking of a tracker he'd been too blind to consider. You should go, he said. Walk out the front. Tell them you were just a witness. They'll let you leave. Aita stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Are you kidding? I'm the only reason your mother isn't catatonic right now. You need me. This isn't your fight. It wasn't my fight in the parking lot either. She pushed past him into the examination room. But here we are. The first gunshot came as Dr. Oakes was leading them toward the service tunnel. The sound was muffled, a suppressed weapon. But José recognized it instantly. The doctor's security guard, stationed at the front entrance, never made a sound after that. Just a heavy thump as a body hit the floor. "Duck it back." José shoved Aita and the doctor toward the examination room where Elena still slept, sedated and unaware. His hand went to the small of his back, finding the compact pistol he always carried. One weapon. 13 rounds, against however many Silvio had sent. Not good odds. "The tunnel," he asked Dr. Oakes, "past the front office, through the storage room." The doctor's voice was steady despite the fear in his eyes, professional to the end. "But they're between us," and glass shattered. The front windows exploded inward in a spray of fragments and the flat crack of unsuppressed gunfire. They weren't being subtle anymore. José moved on instinct, the kind of instinct 20 years in the business had carved into his bones. He grabbed the examination table and flipped it on its side, creating cover. "Get down. Now." Aita was already moving, dragging Elena's sedated form behind the overturned table. The older woman stirred but didn't wake fully, her head lolling against Aita's shoulder. Dr. Oakes pressed himself against the wall beside the door. Footsteps in the hallway, multiple sets, moving with tactical precision. These weren't street thugs. Silvio had sent professionals. The first man through the door caught José's bullet in the shoulder. He spun, went down. The second man was smarter, stayed in the hallway, fired blind around the doorframe. Rounds punched through drywall, too high, suppressing fire. José dropped low, returned fire. 2 shots. The muzzle flash in the hallway disappeared. Either he'd hit something or they'd retreated to regroup. "How many?" Aita's voice was surprisingly calm for someone crouched behind a table while bullets flew overhead. "At least 4. Maybe 6. José ejected his magazine, checked it. 9 rounds left. "We can't stay here." "The storage room." Aita was looking at the wall behind them, the one that backed onto the hallway. "There's a door. I used to clean this place, remember? Before they renovated and turned it into a clinic. This whole floor was medical offices. There's a connecting door they drywalled over but never properly sealed." José stared at her. "How do you know they didn't seal it?" "Because I saw it last month when I was cleaning Dr. Oakes' house. He had the old blueprints in his study. I'm good with layouts. It's how I keep 3 jobs straight." She was already moving, running her hands along the wall. "Here, feel that?" The seam. José pressed his palm against the drywall. She was right. There was a slight depression, a rectangle where the door had been covered over. "Can you break through?" "Not quietly." More footsteps. They were regrouping, coordinating. José heard radio chatter, professional mercenaries with comms. Silvio wasn't taking chances. "Dr. Oakes," José said. "Your office. You have a weapon?" The doctor nodded. "Shotgun, under the desk, and there's a pistol in the medical supply cabinet. Old habits from working in bad neighborhoods. Get them. Now." Oakes moved, staying low. José laid down covering fire, 3 rounds through the doorway to keep heads down. He heard a grunt, a curse, at least 1 hit. Good. The doctor returned with a pump-action shotgun and a snub-nosed revolver. José took the shotgun, handed his pistol to Aita. She looked at it like it was a snake. "I don't know how to. Point. Pull trigger. Repeat." José racked the shotgun. The sound was beautiful, terrifying, final. "But only if they get past me." He turned back to the doorway, and something shifted in him. The fear, the confusion, the emotional chaos of the past hour, all of it locked away behind a wall of cold calculation. This was what Silvio had made him, what 20 years of violence had shaped him into. A weapon. 2 men rushed the door simultaneously, trained professionals trying to overwhelm with speed. José shot the first one center mass. The shotgun roared in the confined space, deafening. The man flew backward. José pivoted, fired again. The second man caught the edge of the blast, went down screaming. Now! José grabbed Elena himself, hauled her up in a fireman's carry. Break through the wall! Aita kicked the drywall where the seam was. Once, twice. On the third kick, the section crumbled inward, revealing darkness beyond. A storage room, just like she'd said. They piled through. Dr. Oakes first, then Aita, then José with Elena. He turned back, fired another round through the doorway blindly, then followed them into the darkness. The storage room was exactly that. Shelves of medical supplies, boxes of equipment, everything coated in dust from the renovation. And there, on the far wall, a service door with a red exit sign above it. The tunnel, Oakes gasped, pointing. Gunfire erupted behind them. Rounds punched through the broken drywall, ricocheting off metal shelving. José shoved Aita forward. Go! Get to the tunnel! She ran. Oakes followed. José laid Elena down carefully behind a shelf, and then stepped back to the opening they'd created. Two men were trying to climb through. He shot the first one, racked the shotgun, shot the second. The weapon clicked empty. He dropped it, drew the revolver from Oakes's belt. 5 rounds. He fired twice more into the examination room, then turned and ran. Aita had the tunnel door open. Concrete stairs descended into darkness. Old infrastructure, probably built in the 50s, when this part of the city was being developed. José could smell standing water and rust. He scooped Elena up again. She was starting to wake, making small, confused sounds. Shh, Mama. I've got you. They descended. The door closed behind them with a hollow boom. José could still hear gunfire above, muffled now by concrete and earth. They were searching, clearing rooms, probably calling for backup. Show 3 blocks, Oakes said, pulling out his phone for light. The tunnel exit's in the basement of an old apartment building. I own it. Use it for storage. They moved through the darkness, water dripping somewhere nearby, their footsteps echoing. Elena was fully awake now, clinging to José's neck, trembling but silent. He could feel her heartbeat against his chest, rapid and fragile. Aita walked beside him, still holding the pistol he'd given her. Her hands weren't shaking. Her breathing was controlled. She'd just survived a gunfight in a maid's uniform, and she was handling it better than most of his soldiers would have. Where did you learn to think like that? He asked. The wall, the blueprints. My mother cleaned houses for 20 years before she died. She taught me to notice everything, where things are, how they connect. Sure, rich people never look at the help, so we see everything they don't. Aita glanced at him. You would have died in that room if you'd tried to shoot your way out. Probably, José admitted. So maybe stop treating me like I'm useless. Despite everything, despite the gunfire and the blood and the fact that his godfather had just tried to kill him, José almost smiled. They reached the far end of the tunnel. Oakes led them up another set of stairs, through a basement filled with dusty furniture, and finally to a loading bay that opened onto an alley 3 blocks from the clinic. The night air hit José's face like a slap. They were alive. Somehow, impossibly, they were alive. But Silvio knew they'd escaped, and he'd be hunting them now. Not with mercy, not with hesitation, with everything he had. Doctor. Oakes made 1 phone call, and 20 minutes later, a battered Ford van pulled into the alley. The driver, a tired-looking woman in scrubs, handed Oakes the keys, asked no questions, and disappeared into the night on foot. That was the kind of loyalty money bought in José's world, the kind that didn't need explanations. It's registered to a shell corporation, Oakes said, pressing the keys into José's palm. Untraceable to you. There's cash in the glove box, enough to get you wherever you're going. Vegas, José said. The word came out harder than he intended. I need to get into my casino, get the records that prove what Silvio did. Oakes nodded slowly. That's a 14-hour drive. Your mother needs rest. Real rest, not just sedation. She'll rest in the van. José looked at Elena, who sat on the loading dock beside Aita and staring at nothing. We can't stay here. Sylvia will tear this city apart looking for us. The doctor understood. He'd worked with José long enough to know how the syndicate operated. There's a motel outside Barstow. Owner's a friend. He'll keep quiet. 6 hours later, they pulled into the Desert Rose Motor Inn, a sad collection of sun-bleached buildings, squatting beside Interstate 15. The owner, a leathery man named Garrett, who looked like he'd been there since the 50s, took José's cash and handed over a key to the end unit without comment. His eyes lingered on Elena for a moment, then Aita's ruined maid uniform, then José's blood-stained knuckles. He said nothing. The room smelled like old cigarettes and industrial cleaner. 2 beds, a bathroom the size of a closet, a television that probably predated José's birth. Aita got Elena settled on the far bed, while José checked the windows, the locks, the sight lines. Old habits. She needs to be cleaned, Aita said quietly. Really cleaned. Not just her face. José looked at his mother. She was filthy. Weeks, maybe months of living on the streets had left her covered in grime, her hair matted, her clothes stiff with dirt and worse things. The smell filled the small room. I'll do it, he said. You don't know how. Aita was already moving toward the bathroom, turning on the shower, testing the water temperature. And she's terrified of you. Let me help. Pride made him want to refuse. This was his mother. His responsibility. But Aita was right. Elena flinched every time he came near, pressed herself against whatever furniture was closest, made small, frightened sounds in the back of her throat. "Nah, fine," he said. "Tell me what you need." They worked together. Aita undressed Elena with gentle efficiency, while José looked away, giving his mother what little dignity he could. Then Aita guided Elena into the shower, still wearing her own underwear, not caring that she was getting soaked. José stood outside the bathroom door, listening to Aita murmur soft reassurances in Spanish while water ran. "Can you bring me the shampoo from my bag?" Aita called. José found her overnight bag. She'd grabbed it from her locker at the supermarket during their escape, the kind of forward thinking that had already saved them twice. Inside was a small collection of toiletries, a change of clothes, a photograph of an elderly woman who must have been the grandmother she'd mentioned. He brought the shampoo, stood in the doorway, watched as Aita worked it through Elena's hair with infinite patience, fingers gentle against his mother's scalp. Elena had her eyes closed, face tilted up toward the spray, and for the first time since the parking lot, she looked almost peaceful. "My grandmother used to love this part," Aita said, working the suds through Elena's matted tangles. "After the accident, after she stopped talking, I'd wash her hair and she'd smile, just a little, like she remembered being cared for." José leaned against the doorframe. Watched this stranger, this girl who'd thrown herself into his nightmare without hesitation, treat his broken mother like something precious, something worth saving. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. Aita glanced at him. Water ran down her face, plastered her red hair to her skull. Her maid's uniform was completely ruined now, soaked and stained. "Because nobody did it for my grandmother. Not really. Just me. And I was 12. I didn't know what I was doing. You seem to know now." "I learned." She rinsed Elena's hair, careful to keep soap out of her eyes. "You learn fast when someone you love needs you." The words hung in the steamy air. Someone you love. She'd known Elena for less than 12 hours, but the way she touched her, spoke to her, protected her, it was love. The kind that didn't need time or blood, just recognition of shared pain. José found towels. Together they got Elena out of the shower, dried, dressed in clean clothes from the motel's gift shop. Simple things. Sweatpants, a t-shirt, socks. Elena let them move her like a doll, pliant and trusting in a way she'd never been with José alone. They settled her in bed. Aita brushed out Elena's wet hair, while José watched from the other bed, something in his chest cracking open. His mother looked different, clean, smaller somehow, more fragile. The gray in her hair was actually silver in the lamplight. She had his father's eyes. He'd forgotten that. Elena's gaze drifted around the room, unfocused, until it landed on José. For a moment, he thought she might speak. Her mouth opened, working around sounds that wouldn't come. Aita took Elena's hand. "It's okay. Take your time." "Sil." Elena's voice was gravel and rust. "Silvio." José went rigid. "Mama?" Elena's free hand came up, made that gesture again, the key turning, locking. But this time she added something new. She pointed at José, then at herself, then made the locking gesture again, more emphatic. "He locked you away," Aita said slowly, understanding dawning. "He locked you away from José." Elena nodded. The movement was small, but it was there. Tears ran down her clean face. "Sil, Vio, bad. José, good." The words were barely intelligible, forced out through decades of trauma and silence. But they were words. They were her voice. And they were for him. José crossed the space between the beds in 2 strides, knelt beside his mother. "I'm going to fix this, Mama. I promise. I'm going to make him pay for what he did." Elena's hand touched his face, trembling, tentative, like she was testing whether he was real. Her fingers traced the tattoos on his neck, the ones he'd gotten after her death. Gang symbols, territory markers, all the ways he'd marked himself as a monster. She didn't pull away in disgust, or just touched them like they were scars she wished she could heal. Aita stood, gave them space. José heard the bathroom door close quietly, giving them privacy. But not before he saw the tears on her face, too. He stayed there, kneeling beside his mother's bed, while she touched his face and cried. And for the first time in 20 years, José Simon allowed himself to cry, too. Las Vegas appeared on the horizon like a mirage, all glass and neon shimmering in the desert heat. José had seen this view 1,000 times, usually from the window of a private jet or the back of an armored car. Never from behind the wheel of a 15-year-old van with his traumatized mother sleeping in the back and a maid he'd known for 2 days, riding shotgun. The Simon Tower dominated the strip, 40 stories of black glass and gold trim, his name blazing across the top in letters 10 feet tall. From this distance, it looked like power, looked like everything he'd built. From this distance, you couldn't see the rot underneath. "I can't go in there," he said. The words tasted like defeat. "He'll have every entrance covered. Security, surveillance, probably half the staff on his payroll." Aita followed his gaze to the tower. "That's your casino." "Was." José's hands tightened on the wheel. "Is. I don't know anymore." "The records you need. Where are they?" "My office. Top floor. Private elevator that requires biometric access and a key code that changes daily." He laughed, bitter. "Silvio designed the security system. Every safeguard I have is something he taught me to build." Elena stirred in the back, making small, distressed sounds. Aita turned, reached between the seats to take Elena's hand. "Shh. We're almost there. You're safe." "Where's there?" José asked. Aita was quiet for a moment. "My apartment. It's not much, but it's on the east side, far from the strip. Nobody from your world would think to look there." They drove through the deteriorating neighborhoods that tourists never saw, past pawn shops and check-cashing places, past apartment complexes with bars on the windows and cars on blocks in the parking lots. The farther they got from the strip's neon glow, the darker everything became. Aita directed him to a 3-story building that had probably been beige once, but was now the color of sun-baked dirt. Half the exterior lights were burned out. Someone had tagged the dumpsters with spray paint that José recognized, local gang symbols, some small-time operations that paid tribute to his organization without ever knowing his face. "3rd floor," Aita said. "No elevator." José carried Elena up the stairs. She was awake now, clinging to his neck, and he murmured reassurances with each step. The stairwell smelled like cooking grease and marijuana smoke. Somewhere above them, a baby cried. Television noise leaked through thin walls. Aita's apartment was number 312. She unlocked 3 separate locks before the door opened. The space inside was smaller than José's master bathroom, a studio apartment with a kit Richardette against one wall, a bathroom barely visible through a narrow door, and a main room that served as bedroom, living room, and dining room all at once. But it was immaculate. Everything had its place. The second-hand furniture was spotless. The plants grew on the windowsill, real ones, green and thriving despite the desert heat. "I know it's not," Aita started. "It's perfect," José said, and meant it. He settled Elena on the small couch. Aita disappeared into the kit Richardette, emerging with a glass of water and some crackers. Elena accepted them with shaking hands, eating slowly, carefully, like she still wasn't sure the food was real. José stood in the center of the room and turned slowly, taking it in. A folding table against one wall served as a desk, covered in neat stacks of paperwork. He recognized the letterhead on some of it, the supermarket where she worked, the cleaning company. A 3rd employer he didn't recognize. 3 jobs. She'd said she worked 3 jobs. On the wall above the table was a photograph. The grandmother from Aita's bag, younger in this picture, her arm around a little red-headed girl who was unmistakably Aita, both of them smiling. "She raised you," José said, "after my parents died. Car accident when I was 6. Aita was arranging blankets on the floor. This was her apartment. I inherited it when she passed 3 years ago." José looked at the cramped space with new eyes. This wasn't poverty of circumstance. This was poverty despite working herself to exhaustion. 3 jobs, and she still lived in a place where the water stains on the ceiling were visible, where the carpet was worn through to subflooring in places. "How much do we pay you?" he asked. "At the supermarket." Aita named a number. It was insulting. Less than José spent on a single dinner. "And the cleaning company?" Another number. Worse than the first. "The 3rd job?" "Waitress. Downtown casino. Oh, not one of yours." She smoothed the blankets, not looking at him. "Tips are good on weekends. Bad otherwise." José did the math in his head. Rent, utilities, food. She was barely surviving, and yet her apartment was clean. Her bills were organized. Her grandmother's photograph was framed and honored. She'd built a life from nothing and maintained it through sheer force of will. In his world, in the Simon Tower, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, people like Aita were invisible. Furniture that moved and cleaned and served. He'd never learned their names, never thought about where they went when their shifts ended. Never imagined they went home to places like this. "I have money," he said. "Not on me, but I can access." "I don't want your money." Aita finally looked at him. "I want you to get those records. Prove what Silvio did. Make sure your mother gets justice." "Why?" The question came out raw. "You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. You could have walked away in that parking lot, in the clinic, in the tunnel. Why are you still here?" Aita crossed to Elena, adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. Elena had fallen asleep again, head tilted back against the couch, face peaceful, in a way José hadn't seen since she was the woman in his childhood memories. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone and get them back," Aita said quietly. "My grandmother, After the accident, after she stopped talking, everyone said she was gone, that I should put her in a facility and move on. But she wasn't gone. She was just lost. And I found her again. She turned to face José. Your mother isn't gone either. She's lost. And you're the only one who can find her. But you can't do it alone. José looked at this woman. This girl, really. She couldn't be more than 25. Who'd upended his entire world in less than 48 hours. Who'd seen him at his worst and still stood beside him. Who'd taken them into her home despite the danger, despite having nothing to gain. I don't deserve your help, he said. Probably not, Aita agreed. But she does. Outside, Vegas blazed. The Strip pumped millions of dollars through its veins, while people like Aita worked 3 jobs to survive. José had built an empire on that inequality, had profited from it, had never questioned it. Until now. Until he saw what it actually looked like from the bottom. He sat on the floor beside the couch where his mother slept, and Aita sat beside him. The apartment was so small, their shoulders touched. Through the thin walls, he could hear their neighbors living their lives. Arguments, laughter, someone practicing guitar badly. Tomorrow, he said, we figure out how to get into the Simon Tower without Silvio knowing. Tomorrow, Aita agreed. Tonight, we rest. But neither of them slept. They just sat there in the darkness, keeping watch over Elena, while somewhere across the city, in a tower of black glass and gold, Silvio waited. José woke before dawn with clarity he hadn't felt in days. He'd been thinking like prey, running, hiding, sneaking. But that wasn't who he was. Silvio had built him into something specific, something dangerous. And now it was time to use that against the old man. He was José Simon, the king of Las Vegas. And kings didn't sneak into their own castles. Aita stirred on the floor where she'd finally fallen asleep around 3. What are you doing? Getting ready to take back what's mine. José was already moving, checking his phone. He had safe houses scattered throughout the city, places even Silvio didn't know about, places where he kept cash, weapons, and clean clothes for emergencies. I need you to trust me. That depends on what you're planning. To walk through the front door. Aita sat up, fully awake now. That's insane. Silvio will have told everyone I'm unstable. Dangerous. Maybe that I've had a breakdown. José pulled up a contact, sent a text to a driver he trusted. He'll have positioned himself as the voice of reason. The loyal advisor trying to protect the business while the boss loses his mind. So proving him right by marching in there is your plan? No. José smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Proving him wrong is the plan. I show up calm, controlled, completely in command. With my mother. The mother everyone thinks died 20 years ago. The mother whose death has been the foundation of every violent thing I've ever done. He looked at Aita. That's not a breakdown. That's a resurrection. And it makes Silvio the liar. Elena was awake now, watching them with those sharp, present eyes she got sometimes. Still mostly silent, but aware. Always aware. 2 hours later, they stood in one of José's safe houses. A nondescript condo in a mid-range building. José had showered, shaved, and dressed in one of his signature suits. Charcoal gray, a custom tailored, with a burgundy tie that cost more than a month's rent on Aita's apartment. He looked like himself again, looked like power. Aita stared at the clothes he'd laid out for her. A designer dress, deep green to match her eyes, with shoes and accessories to match. I can't wear this. You can, and you will. José's voice was gentle but firm. This isn't about sneaking anymore. It's about presentation. You're not the help. You're the woman who saved my mother's life. You walk in there like you own the place, too. For Elena, he'd chosen something softer. A cream-colored pantsuit, elegant and understated. Clothes that would make her look like what she was. Not a beggar, not a victim, but a woman of dignity who'd survived hell. It took Aita's patient hands to get Elena dressed, to style her now clean silver hair, and to help her with the unfamiliar shoes. But when she was done, the transformation was complete. The homeless woman from the parking lot was gone. In her place stood José's mother, recognizable from old photographs he'd kept hidden for 20 years. They drove the battered van right up to the Simon Tower's main entrance. The valets, young men in crisp uniforms, stopped mid-conversation as the rust bucket vehicle pulled up beside a Bentley and a McLaren. José stepped out first. "Let them see him. Let them recognize him." The head valet, Marcus, went pale. "Mr. Simon, sir, we weren't told you were—" "I don't need permission to visit my own casino, Marcus." José's voice was steady, controlled, the voice of a man in complete command. He moved around the van, opened the passenger door, and offered his hand to Elena. She took it, and stepped out slowly, carefully, like royalty descending from a carriage. The valets stared. One of them pulled out his phone, probably texting security, probably texting Silvio. Good. Let them. Aita emerged last. In the designer dress with her red hair styled and her chin up, she looked like she belonged in this world, like she'd always belonged. José offered Elena his left arm and Aita his right. Together, they walked toward the entrance. The doorman, a massive man named Torres, who'd worked for José for 5 years, stood frozen with his hand on the brass handle. "Sir, Mr. Delgado said you were—" He said, "What did Silvio say, Torres?" The man swallowed hard. "That you were unwell. That we should call him immediately if you appeared. That you might be not yourself." José smiled, cold, dangerous. "Do I look unwell to you?" "No, not sir." "Then open the door." Torres opened the door. The casino floor hit them with a wall of sound. Slot machines, laughter, dealers calling bets. Saturday afternoon, and the Simon Tower was packed. José walked through it all with his mother on one side and Aita on the other, moving at a measured pace that said he had nowhere to be but exactly where he was. People noticed. First the staff, dealers glancing up, pit bosses doing double takes, then the players, then everyone. A ripple of recognition spread through the casino floor like a shockwave. José Simon, here, now. With 2 women nobody recognized. Security appeared from nowhere. 6 men in dark suits, earpieces visible, forming a loose perimeter. Not threatening. Not yet. Just present. Watching. José kept walking. Didn't acknowledge them. Didn't slow down. The head of security, Marcus Hendricks, one of Silvio's men, stepped into their path. "Mr. Simon, I need to ask you to come with me. Mr. Delgado wants to speak with you privately." "I'm sure he does." José's grip on his mother's arm was gentle, but his voice was steel. "But I'm not interested in private conversations right now. I'm here to visit my casino. Is that a problem?" Hendricks glanced at Elena, at Aita. Confusion flickered across his professional mask. "Sir, Mr. Delgado said—" "I heard what he said. He's wrong." José took a step closer, close enough that Hendricks had to either back up or stand his ground and make this physical. "Now I'm giving you a choice, Marcus. You can step aside and let me pass. Why, or you can put your hands on me in front of 500 witnesses and explain to them why the owner of this casino isn't allowed in his own building." The silence stretched. Every eye in the immediate vicinity was on them now. Phones were out. People were filming. Hendricks stepped aside. José walked past him, through the main floor, toward the private elevators that led to the upper floors. Elena's hand trembled in his, but she didn't falter. Aita's breathing was quick but controlled. They reached the elevators. José pressed his thumb to the biometric scanner. It flashed green. Silvio hadn't revoked his access yet. Hadn't expected him to walk through the front door like a king returning to his throne. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. José turned to face the casino floor one last time before the doors closed. See, the entire room was watching. Security was frantically talking into their radios. Hendricks had his phone out. And somewhere above them, José knew Silvio was realizing his careful plan had just been shattered by the simple act of José refusing to hide. As the doors slid shut, José saw his reflection in the polished brass, saw himself flanked by the two women who'd saved him from becoming the monster Silvio wanted. The elevator began to rise. "What happens when we get to the top?" Aita asked quietly. José's smile was sharp as broken glass. "We find out who's really in charge." The penthouse elevator opened directly into the conference room. No hallway, no warning, just immediate exposure to the heart of José's empire. 12 men sat around a table of black marble and gold inlay. Silvio at the head, exactly where José usually sat. The syndicate's lieutenants flanked him, the men who ran territories, managed operations, enforced loyalty. Men José had promoted, trusted, worked beside for years. Every face turned toward the elevator. Every conversation died. Silvio recovered first. He always did. That's what made him dangerous. "José." The old man stood, his silver hair perfectly styled, his suit immaculate. His face showed concern, just the right amount of worry for a loyal advisor, seeing his troubled protégé. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. Come sit down. You're clearly under strain. These women, whoever they are, they've confused you." José walked into the room. Elena on his left, Aita on his right. He didn't hurry, didn't explain, just walked to the center of the space where everyone could see them clearly. "Confused," José repeated. "Wait, that's an interesting word. You disappeared. There was gunfire at a clinic." Silvio's voice was smooth, reasonable. He addressed the room now, not José. "I've been trying to protect our interests while José deals with personal issues. But clearly he needs help." "What kind of help?" José asked. "Medical? Psychological?" Silvio's hand moved, just slightly. A signal. 2 guards appeared from the corners of the room, hands resting on their weapons. "You've been through trauma. This woman," he gestured at Elena without really looking at her. "Whoever she is, she's clearly triggered something. Made you believe that she's my mother?" José's voice cut through the room like a blade. The lieutenants shifted. Marcus Reeves, who ran the Northern Territories. David Richard, who managed the casinos. Anthony Russo, head of collections. Men who'd heard the story of José's mother 100 times. The tragic death that had forged their young leader into steel. "José, your mother is dead." Silvio's voice held just the right note of gentle pity. "We buried her 20 years ago. I was there. I identified the body. This woman is alive." José guided Elena forward, into the light from the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Look at her. Really look." Elena stood there, trembling but present. Her silver hair caught the afternoon sun. Her face, clean and cared for now, showed the bone structure José had inherited. The same cheekbones, the same jawline. And around her neck, visible to everyone, the locket. Reeves leaned forward. "Is that my father's work?" José said. "Hand-carved, one of a kind. The twin to this." He held up his right hand, unshowing the ring he'd worn since his father's death. The same rose pattern, the same imperfect petals. "Jewelry can be copied," Silvio said, but his voice had changed. Harder now, less concerned, more calculating. "This is obviously a con. Someone found out about the locket, made a replica, Found a woman who looks vaguely. DNA doesn't lie. José pulled a folded paper from his jacket. The results from Dr. Oakes's clinic. He tossed it onto the conference table. 99.97% match. She's Elena Simon. My mother. The woman you told me was killed by the Moretti family 20 years ago. The room went very quiet. The woman whose death, José continued, became the foundation of everything we built. The reason I was willing to do whatever it took to gain power. To protect what I had left. To make sure nobody could hurt me like that again. He walked slowly around the table, letting each lieutenant see his face. You all know that story. How a 17-year-old kid watched his father die of cancer, then lost his mother to gang violence 6 months later. How Silvio stepped in, raised me, taught me to be strong, to be ruthless, to never show weakness. Anthony Russo nodded slowly. That's the story we all know. It's a lie. José stopped behind Silvio's chair. My mother wasn't killed. She was taken, branded as a debtor, kept on the streets for 20 years, while Silvio told me she was dead, while he used that grief to shape me into his weapon. This is insane, Silvio said, but he was looking at the guards now, making eye contact. Another signal. Show them, José said to Elena. Aita helped Elena roll up her sleeve. The brand mark was visible in the afternoon light. The circle with 3 slashes. The mark every man in this room recognized, because they'd all authorized its use at some point. The syndicate's symbol, José's symbol, burned into his mother's skin. My God, Richard whispered. You branded her? Reeves stood up. You kept her alive and branded her like she was property. José's voice was ice. That's what our debtors are, right? That's what we tell ourselves. They owe us. They belong to us until the debt is paid. Silvio stood abruptly. José, think about what you're doing. Think about what you're saying. You're letting emotions. Emotions? José laughed, and it was a terrible sound. You made me bury my grief for 20 years. Made me think strength meant feeling nothing. And all along, now you were keeping her alive to fuel my rage. I made you strong! Silvio's composure finally cracked. That weak boy would never have survived in this world. I created you. I built you into something that could lead, that could rule. You built me into a monster who almost killed his own mother in a parking lot. The words hung in the air. José saw it land with the lieutenants, saw them putting pieces together, saw loyalty starting to fracture. Silvio saw it too. His hand moved toward his jacket. Gun! Aita's voice rang out. She grabbed a crystal decanter from the sidebar, 2 pounds of cut glass and whiskey, and hurled it across the room with surprising accuracy. It hit Silvio's shoulder as his pistol cleared his jacket. The shot went wide, punching through a window. The old man staggered. I tried to bring the weapon back around toward Elena. José moved. 20 years of violence, of training, of becoming exactly what Silvio had made him, all of it focused into pure motion. He crossed the space in 3 strides, caught Silvio's wrist, twisted. The gun clattered away. José's other hand locked around the old man's throat. You don't get to finish this, José said. You don't get to kill her now to hide what you did. Silvio clawed at José's hand. The guards had their weapons out, but nobody was shooting. The lieutenants were on their feet but frozen, watching their world reshape itself. José dragged Silvio toward the broken window, felt the desert wind howling through. 40 stories of empty air. José, Aita's voice. Calm. Steady. Don't. He kept her on the streets for 20 years. I know. He made me into this. I know. Aita moved closer, carefully. But you don't have to stay this. You can be something different, something better. José looked at his mother. Elena was crying silently, watching him hold the man who destroyed her life, watching her son stand at the edge of becoming a murderer. He pulled Silvio back from the window, threw him to the floor, looked at the guards, called the police. Tell them we have a confession to make about a 20-year-old kidnapping, about human trafficking, about fraud and conspiracy. He looked at each lieutenant in turn. Anyone who has a problem with that can join him. Nobody moved. Silvio lay on the floor, gasping. His perfect silver hair was disheveled now, his composure shattered. "Come on, you're finished," he wheezed. "The syndicate will never—" "The syndicate," José said quietly, "was built on a lie. Time to see what's left when we tell the truth." 3 months later, the Simon Tower conference room looked different. Same black marble table, same floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the strip. But the men sitting around it had changed. Some faces were missing. Lieutenants who'd chosen loyalty to Silvio over truth, who were now facing charges or had fled. New faces had replaced them. Younger. Some of them women. People José had promoted based on competence rather than ruthlessness. And at the head of the table, for the first time in 20 years, sat someone other than José or Silvio. Marcus Reeves, newly appointed chief operating officer, cleared his throat. "The last of the debt collection operations shut down yesterday. We've referred the outstanding debts to legitimate collection agencies. No more enforcement." José nodded from his seat halfway down the table. Not at the head anymore. He'd given that position to Reeves, kept a voting seat, but stepped back from daily operations. And the people who were branded? Medical care provided, debts forgiven. We're working with a legal aid organization to help them rebuild. Reeves glanced at his notes. It's expensive. Very expensive. But the lawyers say it's our best path to avoiding prosecution for the previous practices. I don't care about the cost, José said. I care that it's done right. David Richards spoke up. The casino operations remain profitable. We've divested from the loan operations, the protection rackets, on the gray market imports. We're clean now, legitimate, but our revenue is down 40%. 40% of blood money, José said. I can live with that. The meeting continued, restructuring plans, legitimate business proposals, things that would have bored the old José to death. But he sat through it all, contributed when needed, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Relief. Afterward, he found Aita in Elena's suite, a penthouse apartment 2 floors below his own. She was helping Elena water the plants that now covered every available surface. His mother had discovered she loved gardening, loved anything that grew, anything alive. You don't have to do that anymore, José said from the doorway. We have staff. Aita looked up, dirt on her hands, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She'd refused to dress like she belonged in this world, still wore simple clothes, still moved through the tower like she was visiting rather than living here. I know, but she likes it when I help. Elena smiled, a real smile, the kind that crinkled her eyes. She was talking more now, full sentences sometimes, though her voice still carried the rasp of decades on the streets. Aita has a gift. Plants grow better for her. Everything grows better for her, José said quietly. Aita wiped her hands on a towel. I actually wanted to talk to you about that, about leaving. José went very still. Leaving. My lease is up next month. I've been thinking about moving. Maybe Phoenix. My cousin has a restaurant there. Says she can get me steady work. Aita wouldn't meet his eyes. Your mother is doing better. Or you have professional care for her now. Real therapists. Real doctors. You don't need me anymore. That's not true. José, you think you don't belong here. He moved into the room, careful not to crowd her. You think this world is mine, and you're just visiting. That you're still the maid who happened to be in the right place at the right time. Aita's jaw tightened. Aren't I? No, José looked at his mother. Tell her, Mama. Elena set down her watering can, crossed to Aita, and took both her hands. You are the reason I remember how to be human, not the doctors, not the medicine. You. She pressed Aita's hands to her heart. You stay. Please. Tears welled in Aita's green eyes. I don't fit here. Look at me. Look at this place. I'm not. You're the only thing that makes this place worth staying in, José said. These past 3 months, restructuring everything, trying to build something legitimate. Do you know how many times I wanted to quit? To go back to the easy way? The violent way? You didn't need me to. Every single time I thought about what you'd say, what you'd think, whether you'd be disappointed. He took a step closer. I can't be a good man without you, Aita. I don't know how. She stared at him. That's not fair. You can't put that on me. I'm not putting it on you. I'm asking you to stay because He stopped, started again. Because somewhere between that parking lot and right now, you became the most important person in my life, and I don't want to do this without you. Do what? Any of it. The business, the family, the future. He reached for her hand, hesitated. All of it. With you. Aita looked at their almost touching hands. I have dirt under my fingernails. I have blood under mine, metaphorically speaking. José smiled, tentative. We're both works in progress. She laughed, wet and shaky. This is crazy. 3 months ago I was cleaning toilets. 3 months ago I almost killed my own mother. We've both come a long way. Elena was crying now, happy tears. She pushed Aita gently toward José. Say yes, mija. Say yes to the future. Aita looked at José, really looked at him. The tattoos were still there, the scars from his old life. But his eyes were different now. Softer. More human. Okay, she said. But I'm keeping my apartment, just in case you turn back into a monster. Fair, José said, and took her hand. That evening, they had dinner in Elena's apartment. Not a business dinner, and not a strategic meeting, just family. Elena sat at the head of the small table José had brought in, her silver hair styled simply, wearing a comfortable dress instead of designer labels. She was making jokes now, telling stories about José as a child that made Aita laugh and made him groan. And then, Elena said, eyes bright with the memory, he tried to give the stray cat a bath in the Kit Richards sink. The cat did not agree with this plan. I still have the scars, José said, holding up his forearm. You deserved them, Elena said primly. The cat was fine as he was. Aita was radiant in the candlelight, her red hair catching gold. She'd cooked, insisted on it, despite the professional Kit Richard and staff available. Simple food, the kind she'd grown up with, the kind that tasted like home. José watched them together, these two women who'd saved him from himself, and felt something settle in his chest. Not peace, exactly. He'd done too much for peace. But maybe the beginning of redemption. His phone buzzed. A text from Reeves. Silvio's trial date set. 6 months. They're building a strong case. José deleted it. Didn't respond. Tonight wasn't about the past or justice or revenge. Tonight was about the three of them, this small family built from broken pieces, learning to be whole. José. Elena reached across the table, took his hand. Her grip was stronger now, steadier. Where did you go? Nowhere, Mama. I'm right here. Good. She squeezed once, then released him. Stay here. Stay present. The past is finished. Aita's hand found his under the table, squeezed gently. Outside, Las Vegas blazed with neon and noise. The Simon Tower stood among the glittering chaos, its sign still proclaiming his name in letters of gold. But José wasn't thinking about empires, or legacy, or power. He was thinking about the woman beside him, who'd thrown herself between him and violence. About the mother he'd thought he'd lost, who was sitting across from him, making jokes about cats. About the future they might build together if he could stay this version of himself, the one who chose mercy over rage, family over empire. "Thank you," he said quietly to both of them, "for not giving up on me." Elena smiled. "You're my son. I never stopped believing you were good underneath." Aita leaned her head against his shoulder. "You're welcome, but you're doing the work yourself. We're just here to remind you why it matters." They finished dinner as the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Three people who'd found each other in a parking lot over a scratched Ferrari and built something fragile and precious from the ruins of José's old life. The Simon Tower still stood, but inside it, in a small penthouse apartment filled with plants and laughter, something new was growing, something that looked a lot like hope.